When it comes to anxiety issues, do we need to see a therapist or can we solve our issues all on our own? So I've been working as a one-to-one anxiety therapist for more than a decade now. And one of the things I'm really often asked is, do I need to see you or can I just work this out on my own? The answer to that question is yes, you can. But this yes, it's not an unqualified yes. First of all, even if you do see a therapist, that therapist isn't going to wave a magic wand and you are magically fixed. You are going to have to engage and take part in any form of therapy that you embark upon. Ultimately, the person making the changes is you, not the therapist. Think of your therapist more as a guide than an actual chauffeur that's going to drive you to your destination. It's very much a collaborative process. So no matter what you do, whether you go to a therapist or not, it's still got to be you making those changes. But the simple reason why we know, yes, you can do it yourself is because people do it themselves all the time. What tends to happen is that we get the other side of our anxiety issues by re-educating ourselves about what anxiety actually is and how we relate to it. The major issue with anxiety disorders is that we've started to regard anxiety itself as the huge threat in our life. So it's not coming from outside us, it's coming from inside us in terms of we're now fearing the way we feel. So understanding that anxiety isn't actually a physical threat to us can go a huge way towards getting the other side of those issues. And you can do that without having to have a one-to-one therapist to guide you. We're both fortunate and unfortunate enough to be living in a time when literally every piece of information on the planet is available to us just at the touch of a button. And that inevitably means there's a lot of information, but a lot of misinformation out there. So how do we choose which bits of information we engage with to make the changes we want to make? I suppose we could say, what do we need to know to actually get somewhere helpful rather than be led down a path that's unhelpful? A simple rule of thumb here, when you want to educate yourself about anxiety, if the thing that you're reading or the video that you're watching is suggesting some degree of restrictive message, as in anxiety will limit you in this way, or you can't do this because of your anxiety, then you probably want to disengage from that because they're sending a message that ultimately is just going to make you feel worse. And anxiety is something you can get past without having to be restricted or limited in the way that you can respond. If you're looking at stuff online and it's making you feel better as you're engaging with it, as you're reading an article, as you're looking at a video, I would suggest keep going down that path because ultimately, what's the goal here? We want to reduce anxiety. And if we start to calm our fears and our concerns, that's doing the job we're looking for. And please don't fall into the trap of thinking that your anxiety issue is greater than simply educating yourself or finding the right information. There's nobody on this planet whose anxiety wasn't actually caused by some degree of their understanding about the world around them or themselves within that world. It's all about our education. It's all about information. Understanding is the antidote when it comes to anxiety. So don't make the mistake of thinking, oh yeah, but I've been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, so I can't simply educate my way out of it. You absolutely can. In many instances, the only reason anxiety went to the heights that then demanded that it get diagnosed as an anxiety disorder was because we started to get worried about how anxious we were feeling. We put the focus internally, created that anxiety feedback loop, or the second fear that we talk about, the anxiety about anxiety, and then it hit the levels that somebody was now going to point to us and say, okay, that is what we regard as an anxiety disorder. So you could argue it's the information or the misinformation that caused this in the first place. But here's the thing. Even though we absolutely can re-educate ourselves about our own emotional responses and anxiety in particular, doesn't mean we have to. There is so much help out there these days. And I would always recommend that if you feel like anxiety has got out of control for you, then seek one-to-one help. There's some great people out there and there's some great work you can do with them as your guide. Yeah, and I get the objections that people bring forward here. That idea of, well, am I showing weakness by asking for help? What if it doesn't work? What if it's too much money? All of these objections are based on our own misgivings, our own preconceived ideas. There is no weakness in asking for help. Every single person on the planet needs to ask for help at some point. Don't judge yourself for not yet understanding this stuff well enough to just get the other side of it. And yes, yes, you might engage in a therapy that doesn't work for you, or perhaps a therapist that just isn't right for you. But ultimately, if you keep going, you will find the right person for you, and then you'll be able to do some amazing work that will be life-changing. And if you're worried about the cost of one-to-one therapy, then ask yourself this question. If you could magically click your fingers and any anxiety issues would just be gone, how much would that actually be worth to you? I would suggest it should be the top of your priorities when it comes to what you're going to spend your next money on. Don't dismiss your emotional well-being as just not worth it. But what if you're sitting there thinking, well, actually, Tim, I have tried one-to-one therapy and it just didn't work for me? Well, the good news here is that that doesn't mean you're broken and you can't be fixed, or there's something wrong with you that can't be put right. And I explain the details about this in this next video, which I would urge you to take a look at, because it might just make the difference between you sitting there thinking that you can't be helped and then taking the action to actually change everything.